Good evening, I'm Joel Flynn in Hong Kong. Welcome to View TV News. Coming up on tonight's show. An all-inclusive transport subsidy scheme will kick in on January the 1st, but there is a minimum monthly spending amount. With the announcement that a waste levy is on the horizon for Hong Kongers, we talk to a Green group about what that could mean for the city. And kindergarten and special school classes were suspended today as Tropical Storm Yutu edges closer to the city. Good evening. First up tonight, the government has officially launched its new transport subsidy scheme, which targets all travellers in the city, regardless of their income level. However, there is one requirement, and that is commuters will have to spend at least $400 a month on public transport, including the MTR buses and minibuses. The subsidy amount will be 25% of the expenses above that minimum spending limit and will be capped at $300. The scheme will come into effect on January 1st, and authorities say the reimbursement process is pretty straightforward.
For most of the designated vehicle and also ferry journeys, which are paid by the Octopus card, those will be automatically recorded and paid onto that Octopus card. It's only in those cases whereby those selected tickets, which are now paid through either cash or other non-Octopus means, that they will have to do a separate registration.
There's already been pushback against the government's proposed waste levy scheme, the details of which were revealed yesterday. Some say the city's authorities should instead address the problem of domestic food waste more proactively. On a Now TV programme, a representative for Kowloon Bay's Amoy Gardens said his estate collectively produces about 5 tonnes of kitchen waste a day. He urged the government to collect it on site because it's too expensive to transport to official collection spots. Democratic Party's Ted Hui also weighed in and slammed the government for only setting up food waste processing facilities for businesses. Meanwhile, there are also concerns emerging over how the new levy scheme is going to be implemented in old walk-up buildings.
Residents in those walk-up buildings with homeowners associations worry that it will be more work for the committees, while the people living in those without are concerned about whether the residents who voluntarily take out rubbish for their neighbours will have to show their share of the tax as well.
Well, let's get more on this now with our guest in the studio, Edwin Lau from Green Earth. Edwin, many thanks for talking to us. You know, this scheme seems long overdue, doesn't it?
Yes, the first announcement by the government is around 2004. And at that time, the government says that by 2008, the legislation should be come in place to have a waste levy for all sectors.
Right. The question, of course, is does this current legislation go remotely far enough?
Yes. Yeah. And now it's covers both commercial sector and the household. This is fair.
You're happy with these current plans then?
Yes, but we want the government to really enact the legislation as soon as possible. Cannot be delayed anymore.
In a broader sense, obviously, Hong Kong has a lot of problems with space. Do you think that there are any further ways that this might be pushed back against in terms of what's currently happening?
Now, we see the government data saying that we are keep on increasing our municipal solid waste disposal every year. And 2017 compared to 2016, our municipal solid waste disposal is around 3.7% increase. So the commercial industrial waste portion is increased much more than the domestic level. So the waste charging legislation is really important.
Okay. I mean, in terms of that cost, though, for a lot of very low-income households, this is an extra burden they're going to have to spend, even if it is, you know, only an extra $30 a month. Yeah. Is that fair?
Governments have said yesterday that they will have some subsidy of, say, around $10 per month for the very low incomes families, for them to help them to pay this levy. So I think $30 to $50 is quite a small amount for the general people in Hong Kong. If you go out to a chain restaurant, fast food, you will spend around $50 for lunch.
At a time, though, when we've got a record surplus being held by the government, do you think it's really fair that consumers are having to shoulder this extra charge?
Yeah, I think to be fair, all consumers, all household, all commercial business need to be regulated by the charge, so that this gives them the financial incentive to drive down the waste generation and disposal.
All right, Edwin Lau, we'll leave it there. Many thanks for that.
Thank you.
Well, classes at kindergartens and special schools were suspended today as severe tropical storm Yutu approaches Hong Kong. The Education Bureau made the announcement this morning and ordered schools to keep their campuses open. Yutu came within a radius of 400 kilometres of Hong Kong at around noon today. The observatory also said the storm is edging closer to the coastal waters of eastern Guangdong. Well, the MTR shoddy works hearing continued today with the lead contractor of the Sha Tin Central Link maintaining its stance that the subcontractor is lying. This comes after Jason Poon, the boss of China Technology, admitted that he deleted photo evidence of steel bar cutting after he signed a confidentiality agreement with the link's main contractor, Leighton Asia. But Leighton's lawyer accused Poon of lying, saying if the contractor never asked to see the evidence before asking him to get rid of the pictures, wouldn't that be a stupid move? But Poon continues to insist he is telling the truth. Geriatrician Tony Ko will become the Hospital Authority's new Chief Executive Officer next year, taking over from Lung Pak Yin. Ko's appointment has been endorsed by the authority's board and approved by Chief Executive Carrie Lam. In a statement, the authority said the appointment was made after several rounds of global searching and a thorough deliberation by a selection board. While the exact reason for Ko's appointment has yet to be revealed, there is speculation it might be related to his specialisation in geriatric medicine and Hong Kong's ageing population. The funeral of Walter Kwok, the former chairman of Sung Hung Kai Properties, was held today at St John's Cathedral in Central. Many of Kwok's friends in the business sector attended the service to pay their final respects. That included CK Hutchison's chairman Victor Lee and Bank of East Asia chairman David Lee. And though not there in person, Beijing and Hong Kong officials, such as Premier Li Keqiang, Vice Premier Han Zheng and CE Carrie Lam also offered their condolences. The business tycoon died 2 weeks ago after suffering a stroke back in August. He was 68 years old. All right, let's catch up now on the world of business. Well, we start with a look at today's action on the stock markets. Here in Hong Kong, investors appeared optimistic over economic support measures announced by Beijing. The Hang Seng rose strongly, adding 1.75% for the session to sit at 25,416 points. Chinese mainland stocks also rose, although sentiment was noticeably more tepid. The Shanghai Composite managed to eke out just over a 0.1% gain to hit 2,606 points. Hong Kong's nascent cryptocurrency industry could be about to get a boost. That's after the Securities and Futures Commission, the local regulator of the stock markets, said it was proposing temporary rules for local exchanges of things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Speaking at Hong Kong FinTech Week this morning, SFC Chief Executive Ashley Alder said sandboxes will be used to govern exchanges in the city. Those are essentially special temporary rules structures put into place to test out new ways of doing business in the city. The SFC said in February it would crack down on exchanges working here without a license or those that violate local rules. Hong Kong is the fourth easiest place to do business. That's according to the World Bank's survey of 190 economies. The city was placed fifth last year. It received a lift in rankings following stronger performance in dealing with construction permits and tax payments, among other things. The Chinese mainland also shot up 32 places to 46th position in the world. The World Bank said China has demonstrated, quote, impressive reform agendas to improve the business regulatory environment. For a third year in a row, New Zealand topped the list. A growing number of Chinese nationals are eyeing properties in Athens as rock-bottom property prices there and access to the Schengen area of the EU turn the Greek capital into a popular investment option. Sam Holder has the details.
29-year-old Lian Wenmin hasn't come to Athens for the views. She's here to buy property, like a growing number of Chinese investors. Prices in Greece are still 40% lower than before the country's debt crisis in 2009.
I can buy like 2 or 3 apartments with 250,000, but if I spend the same amount of money in Beijing, I can only buy 1 apartment. It's a big difference, right?
But it's not just low prices attracting Chinese buyers. There's the promise of an affordable golden visa too. A €250,000 investment, the same amount Lian plans to spend, gets a renewable 5-year residence permit and access to 26 European countries under the Schengen Agreement. In the past 2 years, foreign investment in Greek property has soared. €287 million were spent last year, a 91% rise. And that's good news for a Greek economy still in ruins.
Greek property prices are now turning a corner after a 10 years fall. And at the same time, those Chinese investments bring more tax revenues to Greek state coffers.
Chinese buyers like 31-year-old Adam say the weather, beach and beauty of Athens is part of the attraction. But the business opportunities are clear, and so far, almost half of all Greek golden visas have gone to Chinese nationals.
All right, time for a quick break now, but do stay with us. When we return, the Lion Air crash investigation makes a breakthrough after Indonesian divers retrieve the plane's black box.
Infinite visions. View TV6.
TV fun knows no age boundaries.
Are you gonna use your powers? That was fun. Time to
Sit back. We have a lot in store for you.
I'm ready for a story adventure. So come on, we'll show you it's true.
Cartoons that every child, even adults, should be watching. Weekdays from 4:30 to 7. Get playful on View TV6.
Created by the legendary chef Gordon Ramsay. 9 home cooks sharpen their knives, tie their aprons and battle it out. Cookery combat under extreme pressure. Amateur cooks go through rigorous challenges. Bust a gut to impress celebrity chefs from around the world.
Good luck.
Who can stand the heat of the kitchen? Who can take home a cash prize and earn the coveted title of Culinary Genius? Sunday night at 8 on View TV6.
The hottest local news, trending international stories, weekly review, topics that affect our communities, in-depth analyses and opinions. All that you need is in one place. Weekly review. Sunday night at 9 on View TV6. In the enchanted land of Equestria, Unicorn Twilight Sparkle and her pony friends take on the adventure of a lifetime. Together they face exciting challenges that they've never had before and discover the elements of harmony with honesty, kindness, laughter, generosity, loyalty, and magic. The main six learn about the most powerful magic of all, friendship. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Tonight at 7:30 on View TV 6.
Welcome back. There's been a major breakthrough in the investigation of the sudden crash of a Lion Air plane. Indonesian divers today retrieved the Boeing jet's black box, which was found intact in debris on the muddy seafloor. Michelle Hennessy has more.
Indonesian divers say they've found the black box from the doomed Lion Air jet that crashed into the sea this week. Officials hope the data retrieved will help provide answers as to why the nearly new plane went down, killing all 189 people on board. Ground staff lost contact with the flight just 13 minutes after the Boeing aircraft took off on Monday. Indonesian transport officials say the plane had technical problems on its previous flight on Sunday, including unreliable readings of its airspeed. No distress signal was received before Monday's crash, but the pilot had asked to return to base after takeoff. Investigators are trying to determine why. Only small pieces of the aircraft have been retrieved so far, along with personal items believed to have belonged to passengers. An underwater drone has detected an object suspected to be part of the main body of the aircraft, where most of the victims are expected to be found.
Well, even though tensions on the Korean peninsula have eased significantly in recent months, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has once again reiterated that sanctions imposed on his country won't help the peace process. Our correspondent in Seoul, Joseph Kim, sent us this update.
North Korea has been making the appeal. Sanctions are impeding the peace process on the Korean peninsula. In a new statement reported by North Korea's state media, Kim Jong-un lashed out at vicious sanctions, condemning them from trying to block the country's well-being and development, while showing pictures of Wonsan, an area Kim has been very keen to create into a tourist hub. Although the report did not elaborate on who Kim was referring to, sanctions against North Korea have been a point of contention, even between Seoul and Washington.
We work out all the details between us. There is a very high degree of trust between the Ministry of Defense and Republic of Korea Department of Defense. We have a very close consultation between us on all these issues.
There are concerns South Korea and the U.S. are no longer seeing eye to eye when it comes to North Korea, especially in terms of sanctions, as Seoul has pushed through with inter-Korean projects despite reported protests from Washington. While the U.S. has maintained pressure and sanctions will remain in place until verifiable denuclearization happens, Seoul, on the other hand, has on occasion suggested that easing sanctions may help move the process forward.
Some US senators are now calling on President Donald Trump to suspend civilian nuclear energy talks with Saudi Arabia. This comes after Istanbul's chief prosecutor said that journalist Jamal Khashoggi was suffocated to death in the Saudi Arabian consulate and that his body was then dismembered and disposed of. Emily Wither has more.
The journalist killed in Istanbul's Saudi consulate was suffocated as soon as he entered the building, according to Istanbul's chief prosecutor. Jamal Khashoggi disappeared 4 weeks ago during an appointment to pick up paperwork for his upcoming marriage. In a statement from the prosecutor, it says the planned killing saw the Saudi critic suffocated and then his body dismembered and disposed of. The announcement comes after 2 days of talks with Saudi Arabia's public prosecutor, who has been in Turkey as part of a joint investigation. The statement also said no concrete results were reached in those meetings. Khashoggi's death has escalated into a crisis for the kingdom, which at first denied any knowledge of or role in his disappearance. The Saudi prosecutor later saying the killing was premeditated and that Riyadh arrested 18 suspects. That's still not enough for Turkey, though. President Erdogan is demanding to know who ordered the killing. That still remains unknown.
Well, in other news, the US's top diplomat has lashed out at Beijing after the Justice Department revealed it had charged 10 Chinese intelligence officers for conspiring to steal sensitive data. Speaking in a radio interview, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the White House was engaged in various efforts, quote, to convince China to behave like a normal nation on commerce and with respect to the rules of international law. He added that Beijing must stop intellectual property theft, saying it wasn't consistent with being a superpower or a leader in the world. 3 major corporate espionage-related cases involving Chinese intelligence officers have been brought by the Justice Department since September. For its part, the mainland government has rejected the recent charges as pure fiction and totally fabricated. Elsewhere in the US, President Trump has defended his decision to review birthright citizenship. Trump claims the policy is unfair to Americans and isn't technically covered by the Constitution. As the legislation stands, US citizenship is granted to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. That is often interpreted to mean that children born to illegal immigrants in the country are still classified as full citizens. Trump's proposal has been met with fierce criticism, but the president says he's standing firm on it.
Even if they've been on our soil for only a matter of seconds, hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrant children are made automatic citizens every year because of this crazy policy, and they are all made instantly eligible for every privilege and benefit of American citizenship at a cost of billions of dollars a year. That's what it costs, billions.
Well, clamping down on immigration has certainly been a talking point as the US heads into its congressional midterm elections. President Trump is now threatening to send even more troops to the Mexican border to prevent a swelling migrant caravan from entering the country. Gavina Garai has the latest.
The first support troops from Operation Faithful Patriot are on their way to the U.S.-Mexico border, where they're expected to provide logistical support to Border Patrol officers. And there are many more to come. The number of U.S. troops that could be deployed is now being put at about 7,000. This just days after the Pentagon dramatically bulked up the number from just 800 to over 5,200. The military operation is part of President Trump's effort to keep a caravan of Central American migrants fleeing violence in their home countries from setting foot on U.S. soil.
You got some bad people in those groups. You got some tough people in those groups. And I'll tell you what, this country doesn't want them.
But the migrants are still more than 1,500 miles from the U.S. border and could take months to arrive. Critics of the president say the troop deployment is aimed at stoking anti-immigrant fears and winning votes ahead of the November 6th midterm elections. The caravan, they say, is much farther away from the U.S. border than American voters are from the ballot box.
All right, time for sports. We start with big changes afoot for the next World Cup in Qatar in 2022. FIFA President Gianni Infantino has said it could be the first to see an expanded competition featuring 48 teams instead of the current 32. Infantino's suggestion came a week after he conducted an official tour of Qatari stadiums due to host matches for the World Cup. Speaking at the Asian Football Confederation yesterday, Infantino had already said that the 2026 World Cup would feature 48 teams. FIFA have said expanding the 2022 tournament would require the cooperation of other teams in the region, though. However, Qatar has been locked in a diplomatic dispute with its neighbours since last year. Turning to English League Cup action last night, and there was a disappointing return to Stamford Bridge for Chelsea legend Frank Lampard. His Derby team crashed out of the competition's 4th round thanks to 2 own goals in a 3-2 win for the Blues. Lampard's team had to put up a brave fight, drawing level twice against their Premier League opponents. Turning to tennis, and Rafael Nadal has given up his world #1 spot to Novak Djokovic after withdrawing from the Paris Masters. The Spaniard pulled out of the competition just before his opening match against fellow countryman Fernando Verdasco.
I have to think a little bit at the longer term today. I want to keep playing tennis for a couple of years. I'm thinking that way I have to do the logical things, and the logical thing today is not play here. And talking about London, the logical thing is don't have a clear answer right now.
Dominic Thiem looked in impressive form as he swapped aside Gilles Simon in the competition, though. The Austrian has now won 7 matches in a row against his French rival and will face Borna Coric in the last 16. Elsewhere, 4th seed Alexander Zverev beat American Francis Tiafoe. And Japan's Kei Nishikori continued his bid for a place in the season-ending ATP Finals in London with an 88-minute 7-5, 6-4 victory over France's Adrian Manarino. All right, that's it for now. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Coming up next, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season.